Senator Adam Schiff stared directly into his live stream camera and called Speaker Mike Johnson a fraud, completely unaware that the next 87 minutes would systematically destroy his own political career on national television. "You are a fraud, Speaker Johnson, a Christian nationalist cosplaying as a constitutional lawyer, a January 6th election denier who carries a pocket constitution the same way a child carries a stuffed animal for comfort, not for understanding." Senator Adam Schiff delivered the line the way a man delivers a line he has rehearsed in a mirror. He did not look at Speaker Mike Johnson when he said it. He looked at his phone. The phone was mounted on a small black tripod at the witness table, live streaming to 1.8 million concurrent viewers across X, YouTube, and the newly launched Schiff on Substack channel. The banner beneath the stream read, "Senator Schiff's Constitutional Reckoning Live." Behind him, a projection screen cycled through preloaded graphics his communication staff had built the previous night. One showed Johnson's face beside the caption, "Not a real lawyer." A second showed a cartoon of Johnson dressed as a founding father with a speech bubble reading, "I bought this Constitution at a gas station." A third placed Johnson as pocket Constitution next to a children as coloring book. The graphics rotated every 4 seconds on a timer. "Let me tell the American people what a real constitutional lawyer looks like." Schiff pointed across the hearing room without turning his head. "A real constitutional lawyer argues before the Supreme Court. A real constitutional lawyer clerks for federal judges. A real constitutional lawyer has a publication record. A real constitutional lawyer does not get his legal education from a Baptist seminary and a pamphlet handed out at a megachurch." 3 of Schiff's staffers seated in the second row typed simultaneously. Within 90 seconds of his opening sentence, number "fake constitutionalist" was trending on X, and the live stream comments scrolled faster than the human eye could track. "Destroy him. Adam. Read him the law. End his career. This is why we elected you." Schiff had requested this hearing himself. The Joint Subcommittee on Constitutional Integrity and Executive Branch Accountability. He had chosen the date, and he had approved the witness list. He had negotiated the unusual arrangement that placed him at the witness table rather than on the panel, an arrangement his staff had pitched as the prosecutor's chair. He had told his communications director 2 weeks earlier that this hearing would define the next decade of American constitutional discourse. He had also told her it would end Speaker Johnson's career. She had written both predictions down in her planner. They were still there. Across the room on the panel side, Speaker Mike Johnson sat in the second chair from the left. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that looked like it had been pressed exactly once. In front of him were 3 objects: a weathered pocket constitution with visible dog ears and margin notes written in 2 different colors of pen, a silver pocket watch that had stopped showing any particular decade, and a single dark navy folder with a handwritten white label. The label read, "Schiff versus Constitution, Case File." A reporter in the front row from the Associated Press photographed the folder. Johnson did not react to Schiff's opening. He did not look up, nor did he adjust his microphone. He opened the pocket constitution to a page already bookmarked, took a blue pen from his inside jacket pocket, and made a small notation in the margin. "You, Speaker Johnson, are the worst kind of fraud," Schiff continued. "Not the obvious kind, the dangerous kind. The kind who has convinced half of America that a law degree from an LSU night program is equivalent to a constitutional scholar's life work. The kind who walks onto the floor of the House, waving a pocket constitution the way a street preacher waves a Bible loudly, performatively, and without ever once opening it to a page that inconveniences him." Schiff adjusted his phone on the tripod so the camera caught his profile more flatteringly. His staff had rehearsed this angle with him in his Senate office the night before. The lighting in the hearing room was better than they had hoped. So today, I am going to do the American people a service. I am going to expose on this live stream, in this room, in front of this committee, what Speaker Johnson has spent his career hiding. He is not a constitutional lawyer. He is a costume. He paused. He had rehearsed this pause. The American people deserve an answer. Speaker Johnson, in front of this committee, on the record, are you a constitutional lawyer, or are you a fraud pretending to be one? The live stream counter climbed past 1.85 million. One of the 3 Schiff staffers behind him took a photograph of the counter and posted it to his personal X account with the caption, "Here we go." The post would collect 19,000 likes in the first 10 minutes, then stop. Johnson closed the pocket Constitution. He did not stand, and he did not straighten in his chair. He simply looked up, not at Schiff, but at the primary C-SPAN camera mounted on the press riser. His voice, when it came, was so soft that the Senate sound engineer in the control booth, 3 floors above, leaned forward to check his input levels. "Senator, I am happy to answer that question, but before I do, may I ask you one thing?" Schiff smiled. It was the smile of a man who believed he was in control of the room. "Please, take all the time you need." Johnson nodded once. He opened the Navy folder. "Senator, when was the last time you read the 4th Amendment?" The hearing room went silent. The sound engineer's levels dropped to flat. A reporter from the Wall Street Journal stopped typing mid-sentence. Schiff's smile held for 3 seconds. Then it flickered. He would spend the next 4 hours trying to get it back. He would not succeed. Johnson did not wait for an answer. He stood, holding the pocket Constitution. He did not raise his voice, and he did not theatrically clear his throat. He simply opened to the page he had bookmarked and began to read the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects, against unreasonable searches and seizures, shall not be violated. He closed the book. 27 words. "Senator, the 4th Amendment. I read it this morning. I read it most mornings. I don't read it because it's a prop. I read it because every time I read it, I remember how much it asks of the people in this room." He sat down, opened the Navy folder, removed 4 documents, each with a red declassification stamp, and placed them on the table in a neat row. Next to them, he placed a 5th document, a thinner one with a different seal. "Senator, these are the 4 FISA applications used to surveil Carter Page. They were declassified in 2020. They are publicly available. Any American citizen can read them. This 5th document is your memo, the minority memo you authored in February 2018. I have read both." He tapped the minority memo gently. "Your memo contains this sentence. I will quote it exactly. FBI and DOJ officials did not abuse the FISA process, omit material information, or subvert this vital tool to spy on the Trump campaign." "Is that your memo, Senator?" Schiff leaned into his microphone. "Speaker Johnson, this is ancient history. The American people have moved on. You are rehashing. Is that your memo, Senator?" "Yes, but thank you." Johnson reached into the folder again. He removed a thin stack of printed emails stapled at the corner with what appeared to be a House Intelligence Committee minority staff header. "Senator, I'm going to read from 4 internal emails. These came into my possession through channels I will describe to any investigating body that asks. They are dated between January and February of 2018, the period in which your memo was drafted." Schiff's lawyer, a tall man in a Navy suit with silver cufflinks, leaned forward and whispered into Schiff's ear. Schiff waved him off without turning his head. "Email 1, dated January 29th, 2018. from your senior staff counsel to you. Subject line, Nunes Memo Substantive Response. Quote, Chairman, the unredacted FISA materials we reviewed yesterday contain at least 11 factual inaccuracies. Nunes is not wrong about the omissions. How do we respond? End quote. He placed the email down, did not look up. Email 2, dated January 30th, 2018. Your reply. Quote, we don't respond to the substance. We respond to the intent. Frame Nunes as partisan, and the details become noise. End quote. The live stream comments paused. The scroll slowed. Email 3, dated February 6th, 2018. From your staff counsel again. Quote, Sir, if Horowitz runs his own review, he will find most of what Nunes cited. We need a fallback position. End quote. Johnson lifted the fourth email. Email 4. Your reply, also February 6, 2018. Quote, by the time Horowitz reports, the news cycle will have moved. We just need to win this week. End quote. He placed the emails down, picked up a sixth document. December 9th, 2019. Inspector General Michael Horowitz publishes his report on FISA applications targeting Carter Page. The report identifies 17 significant inaccuracies, 7 in the first application, a total of 17 by the final renewal, every single one on the majority side of the ledger, not the minority. Your memo was wrong, Senator. Not misinformed, not mistaken. Wrong. And you knew it would be wrong when you wrote it. Schiff pulled his microphone closer. His voice had an edge now. Speaker Johnson, you are reading unverified documents. You have produced no chain of custody. You have, Senator. I'm not a prosecutor. I'm not trying these in a court of law. I'm reading them aloud in a Senate hearing room. You can challenge them. You can call them fabrications. You can demand they be authenticated. I invite you to do so. Would you like to state for the record that these emails are forgeries? Schiff opened his mouth, closed it, looked at his lawyer. The lawyer's jaw had gone rigid. I reserve comment on documents that have not been authenticated through proper channels. Thank you, Senator. Let the record reflect that you did not deny the emails. Johnson turned the page in his folder. The Fourth Amendment is not a news cycle, Senator. It is a constitutional right, and when the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee certifies in an official minority memo that no rights were violated, while his own staff informed him in writing that rights likely were violated, that is not a political disagreement. That is an act of constitutional injury. Johnson reached back into the folder. Senator, I want to read one more thing before I move on. The Horowitz report on page 123 states, and I quote, that the Crossfire Hurricane Team obtained information from Steele's primary subsource in January of 2017 that raised significant questions about the reliability of the Steele reporting. The FBI knew in January of 2017 that the source material underlying the FISA applications was unreliable. He set the page down. Your memo was signed 15 months after the FBI learned the source was unreliable. 15 months, Senator. The intelligence community knew. The Inspector General would later confirm, and you certified in writing that none of it had happened. Schiff's communications director, a woman in her early 40s seated 2 rows behind him, had been taking notes throughout round 1. She stopped. She placed her pen on her notepad. She looked at the ceiling briefly. A photographer from Reuters captured the expression and later titled the image when it was published, "The Moment of Recognition." Johnson continued without noticing. Senator, I want to be clear about what I am not saying. I am not saying the FBI was right to do what the Inspector General found they did. I am not defending the FISA process as it operated in 2016. That process was badly flawed. My colleagues and I have introduced legislation to reform it. What I am saying is simpler. When a flawed process produced a constitutional violation and the chairman of the committee charged with oversight certified that no violation had occurred, that is the failure this hearing exists to examine. Not the FBI's failure, yours. On Schiff's livestream, the counter ticked down from 1.85 million to 1.71 million to 1.52 million. The comments section shifted. Wait. What did he read? Internal emails? Is this real? Somebody fact-check this. A user with a blue verification check, a progressive commentator with 1.4 million followers, posted to her own feed midstream. I need to see the provenance on these emails before I comment, but I'm not seeing a denial from Schiff's team yet. That's unusual. Her post was screenshot quoted within 90 seconds by 36 conservative accounts. Within 10 minutes, her name was trending alongside Schiff's. Johnson closed the FISA folder, reached into the Navy file, and drew out a second, larger folder. This one was labeled in the same handwriting, Property Records. State of Maryland. Senator, I would like to move on to the Fifth Amendment, if you would permit me. Johnson did not open the second folder immediately. He took a sip from the water glass in front of him. He capped the pen he had been using and replaced it in his jacket pocket. The pocket watch on the table had not moved because it had not been wound that morning. Johnson would later say in interviews he did not give that this was the point. Senator, the Fifth Amendment does two things. It protects Americans against self-incrimination. It also guarantees due process of law. A lot of people remember the first part. Fewer remember the second. I'd like to talk about both. He opened the folder. On August 27, 2003, you and your wife purchased a property at redacted street address in Potomac, Maryland, for $870,000. You financed the purchase with a Fannie Mae-backed mortgage of $610,000 at a rate reserved for primary residences. On the loan application, you certified under penalty of federal law that the Potomac property was your primary residence. He placed the document down. At the time of that certification, Senator, you were the sitting United States Representative for California as 29th Congressional District. You had held that seat for 3 years. You would hold it for 21 more. He removed a second document. In 2009, you purchased a condominium in Burbank, California for $485,000. You also financed that property. Shortly after the purchase, you filed for a homeowner's tax exemption on the Burbank condo, an exemption available only for a primary residence. You certified again, under penalty of law, that the Burbank condo was your primary residence. A third document. Between 2009 and 2019, you refinanced the Potomac property 5 times. Each refinancing application carried the same certification. Each time you signed under penalty of federal law that Potomac, Maryland, was your primary residence. During this same period, you continued to claim the California homeowner's exemption on the Burbank condo. Your primary residence, Senator, cannot be in 2 states simultaneously, Schiff's lawyer whispered. Schiff did not wave him off this time, Johnson continued. On May 27, 2025, the Federal Housing Finance Agency sent a criminal referral to the Department of Justice. The referral, signed by Director William P., identifies, and I quote, a sustained pattern of possible occupancy misrepresentation across 5 Fannie Mae-backed loans. A federal grand jury is currently impaneled in the District of Maryland to examine this matter. These are facts, Senator, not allegations. The grand jury exists. The referral exists. I did not invent them. He placed the FHFA letter next to the mortgage documents. Now, Senator, I am going to do something a prosecutor would not do. I am going to explain the potential statutes to the American people, not because I am accusing you, because they deserve to understand what is being investigated. He held up his pocket Constitution briefly, not opening it. Title 18, United States Code, Section 1, 343, Wire Fraud. The transmission of representations across state lines to obtain money or property. Title 18, Section 1341, Mail Fraud, the same by mail. Title 18, Section 1344, Bank Fraud, defrauding a financial institution. Title 18, Section 1014, false statements to a financial institution. Each of these statutes carries federal penalties. Each has been invoked in mortgage misrepresentation cases before. None is novel. Johnson set the book down. Senator, I also have, and I want to be precise about how I came to possess these 3 documents that have been provided to this committee under proper channels. I will submit them for the record. I will read them now. The lawyer whispered again, more urgently. Document 1. A 2014 Internal Compliance Memo from Wells Fargo. Subject line, File Review. A. Schiff. Quote, borrower claims Maryland property as primary residence while simultaneously claiming California homeowners exemption, recommend escalation to senior review. End quote. Handwritten note at the bottom, cleared per supervisor. Initials unclear. Document 2. A 2013 transcript of a recorded phone call between you and a mortgage broker licensed in Maryland. The call was recorded for quality assurance, which is lawful in Maryland with one-party consent. Broker speaks first. Quote, sir, for a rate lock this low, the lender needs you to occupy the property as primary. You understand that SA federal representation. End quote. Your reply, quote, I understand, listed as primary, end quote. A pause. Document 3. A 2016 email from a tax preparer in Burbank, California, to your senior staff. Quote, Congressman, we need to address the inconsistency. You cannot claim primary residence in Maryland for mortgage purposes while simultaneously claiming homeowners exemption in California for tax purposes. This creates exposure. End quote. The reply from your staff 2 days later. Quote, note the concern. We'll address it next cycle. End quote. Johnson looked up for the first time in 4 minutes. The same tax preparer sent similar emails in 2017, in 2018, in 2019, 4 consecutive years. Senator, I have all 4. I am not going to read them all. The language is the same. He turned a page, retrieved one final document. This last item, Senator, I want to read with particular care. It is a transcript of a floor speech you delivered in this very building on March 14, 2022. The subject was corporate fraud and the need for accountability. You are the speaker. Quote, when powerful people falsify documents to financial institutions, they must face the same accountability as ordinary citizens. No one is above the law. End quote. Johnson placed the transcript on top of the mortgage documents. I agree with you, Senator, completely. I suspect when the Maryland grand jury finishes its work that many Americans will agree with you too. Johnson paused, picked up his water glass, did not drink, set it down. Senator, I want to say one more thing about this before I move on, because it matters, and I want it in the record. He folded his hands on the table. I am not making a criminal accusation from this chair. I do not have the authority to do so. The Maryland grand jury does. The Department of Justice does. They will or will not bring charges based on evidence I have not seen in full. That is not my role. My role as Speaker of the House is to read the record of a sitting senator and to ask plainly in public whether that record is consistent with the oath that senator took. He looked up, not at Schiff, but at the Democratic senator seated 2 chairs to Schiff's right. A woman who had in the first hour of the hearing nodded approvingly at Schiff's opening salvo. And I want to speak for a moment to every member of this body who has ever certified a mortgage application, who has signed a tax return, who has filed a financial disclosure. The rules apply to us too. Not the same rules as a homeless man facing a misdemeanor, the same rules as the corporate executive, the senator, rightly condemned in 2022. The same rules, Senator, that you invoked on this very floor. The Democratic senator looked down at her own documents. She did not nod again for the remainder of the hearing. Johnson turned back to Schiff. If the grand jury finds that you did not violate these statutes, I will be the first to say so publicly from this same chair. I mean that. A criminal referral is not a conviction. A grand jury is not a trial. You are entitled to a defense. You are entitled to the presumption of innocence. These are constitutional rights, and I will defend them for you as vigorously as I would for any American citizen. He paused. What you are not entitled to, Senator, what no senator is entitled to, is to stand in this room and call another senator a fraud, while your own mortgage records sit in a federal grand jury file room in Greenbelt, Maryland. That is not a legal matter. That is a question of standing. And on this question today, Senator, you do not have it. The live stream counter had dropped to 1.1 million. One of Schiff's own staffers seated in the second row behind him got up quietly, walked to the rear exit, and left the room. Another staffer's phone vibrated visibly. She read the message, put the phone face down on her lap, and did not look up for the rest of the hearing. A third staffer, the youngest of the group, a man in his mid-20s, who had joined the Senate office only 6 months earlier, did not move, but he stopped taking notes. He stared at the back of Schiff's head for a full minute. A reporter later described the look on his face as the expression of a person recalculating his entire career on the spot. Johnson closed the second folder, reached for a third. The third folder was thinner. Johnson did not open it right away. He placed his hand on top of it, palm flat, and let the silence hold for a full 10 seconds. When he spoke, his voice had shifted lower, slower, less clinical. A reporter would later describe the tonal change as the moment the speaker stopped being a lawyer and started being a neighbor. Senator, I want to turn to Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution, the Emoluments Clause. It forbids members of this body from accepting emoluments from any foreign king, prince, or state without the consent of Congress. It is, at its heart, an anti-corruption clause. The framers understood that representatives who owe their loyalty to money cannot owe their loyalty to the people. He lifted his hand from the folder. But the spirit of the clause, the underlying principle, reaches beyond foreign gold. It reaches to the question of what a member of Congress owes the people he represents when something in his own circle goes profoundly, terribly wrong, and whether silence in that moment is a form of loyalty to the wrong master. He opened the folder. Senator, I do not want to make a single claim today that is not grounded in public record. So let me begin with the record. He produced the documents one at a time. Federal Election Commission filings between 2008 and 2017. Mr. Edward Buck, a Democratic donor residing in West Hollywood, California, made political contributions totaling over $500,000 to federal and state candidates. Among those contributions were amounts given to your campaigns, to the campaigns of your California colleagues, and to the California Democratic Party. He placed a second document. On July 27, 2017, a young man named Gemel Moore was found lifeless in Mr. Buck's West Hollywood apartment. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner ruled the passing a tragic substance overdose. Mr. Moore was 26 years old. He was black. He had been living in transitional housing and working as a nightlife companion. His mother, Letitia Nixon, began asking questions the day her son passed. A third document, on January 7, 2019, 17 months after Mr. Moore's passing, a second young man, Timothy Dean, was found lifeless in the same apartment. Same cause, same circumstances. Mr. Dean was 55 years old. He was black. He was an activist in the West Hollywood gay community. A fourth. On September 17, 2019, Mr. Buck was arrested after a third man, who survived, escaped the apartment and called 911 from a nearby gas station. Mr. Buck was ultimately convicted in federal court of 9 felonies, including providing illicit substances that resulted in fatal consequences. He is serving a 30-year federal sentence. Johnson looked up. These are not accusations, Senator. These are findings of fact. They were proven in a federal court of law. I did not write them. I am reading them to you because the American people need context for what I am about to read next. He drew out a smaller stack of documents. Senator, I have here 4 emails sent to your district office between August of 2017 and March of 2018. They are provided under the same chain I described earlier. I will submit them for the record. The first email, August 14, 2017, 3 weeks after the passing of Memo Moore, from a Los Angeles community organizer active in the black LGBTQ advocacy community. Quote, Congressman, a young black man named Memo Moore lost his life in your donor Ed Buck's apartment last week. The community is asking why. We need your voice. End quote. The reply from your district scheduler, dated 4 days later. Quote, forwarded for review. The congressman's schedule is full this month. End quote. The second email, November 22, 2017, from Jasmine Kanek, a journalist and activist who has publicly advocated for the Moore family since the day of his passing. Miss Kanek is a real person. She is alive. You know who she is. Quote, Congressman Schiff. 3 months, no statement, no meeting. Buck donated to your campaign. Your silence is noticed. End quote. There is no reply in the record. The third email, March 4, 2018, from Letitia Nixon, Memo Moore's mother. Quote, Our son passed in your donor's apartment. We are asking for one meeting, one conversation. That is all. End quote. The reply from your district scheduler, dated 6 days later. Quote, The congressman regrets he is unable to accommodate this request at this time. End quote. Johnson placed the emails on the table, did not press them, did not stack them neatly. The fourth document is not an email. It is a 2-page internal strategy memo dated April 2018, prepared by your senior communications staff. Quote, On Buck recommend, continued distance. LA County DA is handling. Any public statement from our office could raise questions about prior donations. Silence is the lower risk posture. End quote. He folded his hands. Senator, I want to be careful here. I am not saying you caused the tragedy of Memo Moore or Timothy Dean. No one is saying that. Ed Buck caused those outcomes. He is in federal prison. That is settled. He paused, took a breath. What I am saying is, this 17 months passed between the first incident and the second. During those 17 months, a mother asked you for a meeting. A community asked you for a voice. A journalist asked you to say something, anything, and the lower risk posture was silence. Schiff's microphone was open. The room could hear him breathing. He did not speak. Johnson continued, "The emoluments clause cannot legislate conscience, Senator. No clause can. But the oath that every member of this body takes to uphold the Constitution carries with it a quieter obligation not to trade the voices of the forgotten for the safety of the comfortable. When a constituent family asks you for one meeting, and the answer from your office is that your schedule is full for 18 months across 2 tragedies, that is not a constitutional violation. It is a moral one, and the Constitution was written by men who believed the two were rarely far apart. The live stream counter passed through 900,000 and kept falling. Schiff reached for his water glass. His hand was not steady. He brought it halfway to his mouth, set it down, and did not drink. Johnson allowed the room to breathe for nearly 30 seconds. When he resumed, his voice had returned to the measured, almost professorial register of round 1. He was not a prosecutor. He was a teacher who had spent 20 years explaining hard things to juries that had not asked to be there. "Senator, I would like to turn to the First Amendment, the speech clause. It is, as you know, the clause that protects all the others. Without the right to speak freely, no other right survives. You have invoked this clause, by my count, 47 times in floor speeches during your tenure." He opened the 4th folder. "I want to talk about June 21st, 2023, the day you were censured by the House of Representatives by a vote of 213 to 209. The resolution cited your repeated public claims over a multi-year period that you had direct evidence of collusion between the 2016 Trump campaign and the Russian government. Claims that the Mueller report, the Horowitz report, and the Durham report each independently failed to substantiate." Johnson placed a copy of the censure resolution on the table. "I voted for that resolution, Senator. I was on the floor that day. You walked to the well of the House. You stood there while the resolution was read into the record. Afterward, you told the press, and I am quoting exactly, that you would wear the censure as a, quote, badge of honor, end quote." He removed 3 more documents from the folder. "Senator, I am going to read 3 things now. I want you to listen carefully. I am not going to editorialize between them. The first document, media preparation notes prepared by your communications staff in advance of your March 22, 2017 appearance on Meet the Press. These notes were for your eyes. Quote Q. If asked whether we have direct evidence, do not say yes. Say more than circumstantial. This polls better in the moment. Chuck Todd will not press." End quote. The second, an internal polling memo dated June 4, 2018. Subject line, Chairman Media Strategy. Quote, Chairman S. television appearances driving +18 favorability among Democratic primary voters. Recommendation, increase appearance frequency. Avoid specific evidentiary claims that can be fact-checked post hoc. End quote. The third, an email from you to your communications director dated April 12, 2019. Subject line, walk back, question. Quote, we don't need to walk it back. We just need to move forward. The base doesn't want us to be right. They want us to fight. End quote. Johnson set the email down, did not look at Schiff, looked at the camera. The base doesn't want us to be right. They want us to fight. He let it sit. Senator, that is the sentence I want the American people to consider. Not because it is cynical, because it is the opposite of representation. Madison wrote in Federalist 57 that the representatives of the people must be attached to the interest of the people, not to the narrative, not to the news cycle, not to the fight, the interest. He leaned forward very slightly. When you wrote in your own hand that the base does not want us to be right, only to fight, You did not describe a political strategy. You described the end of a constitutional theory of representation. You admitted in writing that you had stopped serving the people and started performing for them. That is the act for which you were censured. Not the wrong facts, the wrong posture. Schiff, for the first time in the hearing, pushed back with real force. Speaker Johnson, you are producing documents with no chain of custody. You are reading selected emails with no context. You are building a narrative. You are doing exactly what you are accusing me of doing. And the American people can see it. This is the MAGA playbook. I've seen it before. Every Democrat in this country has seen it before. You produce forgeries, and you call them evidence. You invent quotes, and you call them history. I am not going to sit here and dignify a parade of fabrications. It was a strong moment, a real one. 2 Democratic senators in the panel nodded slightly. One reporter in the press row exhaled audibly, relieved that Schiff had finally struck back. Johnson nodded. Senator, that is a fair challenge. So let me offer a fair answer. He closed the folder gently. I am not a prosecutor. You are right that I cannot prove these documents in a court of law, from this chair. That is not the burden of this hearing. The burden of this hearing is simpler. It is this. If the documents I have read today were false, you would be demanding their retraction. You would be naming the forger. You would be filing a complaint with the Capitol Police. You would be calling for a criminal referral against whoever produced them. He paused. You have done none of those things. You have said instead that they are part of a playbook. Senator, the American people watched you certify in 2018 that FISA was not abused. Then they watched the Inspector General document 17 inaccuracies. They watched you claim on national television that you had seen evidence of collusion. Then they watched Robert Mueller testify that he could not prove conspiracy. They watched you promise transparency about your donations. Then they watched Ed Buck convicted of 9 felonies in a West Hollywood courtroom. At some point, Senator, the question is not whose playbook is being used. The question is whose story keeps coming apart. Schiff said nothing. He looked down. He lifted his pen, set it back down without writing anything. The silence held for 6 seconds. Long enough that the C-SPAN control room in a booth 3 floors above the hearing room cut to a wide shot, to avoid the awkwardness of holding a close-up on a man who could not answer. A Senate page, a 17-year-old girl from Utah, in her first month on the job, walked quietly along the back wall of the hearing room, carrying a pitcher of water. She stopped at the witness table. Schiff did not notice her. She stood there for nearly 30 seconds, waiting for him to acknowledge her presence. Eventually, she refilled his water glass without his looking up and walked away. A reporter captured a photograph of that moment. The page, the pitcher, the senator, staring downward, and it was published the following day in the Washington Post with the caption, "Unwitnessed." Johnson did not press the pause. He did not smile. He did not use the silence to score a point. He simply sat, hands folded, and waited for the senator to speak if he wished to. Schiff did not wish to. After the 3-0 mark, Johnson spoke again, quietly. Senator, I've said what I came here to say about the censure, about the 2017 appearances, about the pattern. If you wish to respond on the record, I will yield the floor for you to do so. I have no objection to your rebuttal. I invite it. Schiff's lawyer whispered into his ear for nearly a minute. Schiff shook his head. Once, twice, then finally leaned into the microphone. Speaker Johnson, I will respond to these documents in the appropriate forum at the appropriate time. This hearing is not that forum. I decline to address each individual document today. Johnson nodded slowly. Not dismissively, not triumphantly, the nod of a man who had expected exactly that answer. I understand, Senator. That is your right. The live stream counter crossed below 500,000. Johnson closed the First Amendment folder and set it on top of the others. He reached for the pocket Constitution. There were no more folders. Johnson sat very still for a moment. Then he picked up the pocket watch, turned it in his fingers, opened the case, closed it, set it on the table to the right of the pocket Constitution. Senator, I am going to close with this, and then I am going to yield my time. He did not clear his throat. His voice had gotten softer, not louder. This watch belonged to my father, Pat Johnson. He was a firefighter in Shreveport, Louisiana. In 1984, when I was 12 years old, he was caught in a house fire that took his best friend and left him burned over 40% of his body. He spent the rest of his working life disabled. He did hazmat consulting when he could. He could not always. He was the first person in my family to buy a home. I was the first person in my family to go to college. The room had gone absolutely still. Even Schiff's camera crew had stopped adjusting their angles. My father never read the Federalist Papers. He had not heard of James Madison until I came home from law school and told him he did not have the language of the Constitution, but he understood something that a lot of people with law degrees seem to forget. Johnson picked up the pocket Constitution, did not open it. He understood that you show up, you do the job in front of you, and when you make a promise to your crew, to your family, to the people who trust you, you keep it. That is not a constitutional theory, Senator. That is the preamble. He opened to the first page. Read quietly. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. He closed the book. We, the people. Not we, the powerful. Not we, the well-connected. Not we, the ones who get the speaking fees after we leave office. The people. The mother in West Hollywood who asked you for one meeting. The constituent in Burbank who pays her mortgage honestly. The soldier who still serves. The firefighter who still answers the call. He looked at Schiff for the first time since round 3. You stood here today, Senator, in front of your camera crew, on your live stream. You asked me whether I was a fraud. I want to give you an honest answer. I am a constitutional lawyer from a small town in Louisiana. I represent 760,000 people. I read this pocket Constitution most mornings. Not because it is a prop, because I keep forgetting how much it asks of me. He set the book on the table. You, Senator, have served in the Congress of the United States for 24 years. You chaired the House Intelligence Committee. You led a presidential impeachment. You wrote a New York Times bestseller. You sit today in the United States Senate. And in this room, on this live stream, in front of the American people, you asked me if I was a fraud. A pause, not theatrical, the pause of a man deciding whether to say the next sentence. I am not the one a Maryland grand jury is investigating. I am not the one whose donor was responsible for the tragic loss of 2 young men while my office sent form letters to their families. I am not the one who was censured by the House of Representatives for misleading the American people about an investigation I was leading. He picked up the pocket watch, placed it in his jacket pocket, picked up the pocket Constitution, placed it in the opposite pocket, stood up. So, Senator, I will ask your question back to you, not as an accusation, as a mirror. Are you? He did not wait for an answer. Mr. Chairman, I yield my time. Johnson stepped away from the table, walked down the center aisle. He did not look at Schiff. He did not look at the cameras. He nodded once to the Capitol police officer at the door, a man he had known by first name for 7 years, and left the hearing room. Behind him, Senator Adam Schiff sat at the witness table. His live stream still ran on the tripod in front of him. The counter, visible to anyone watching, dropped through 380,000, then 340,000, then 290,000. Schiff did not speak. He looked down at the documents on the table in front of him, his own documents, the ones he had prepared for an entirely different hearing. His phone, still live streaming, captured him exhaling once. A long breath. The microphone picked it up. That breath would be viewed within 3 days, 31 million times. Schiff's live stream, which had opened the hearing with 1.85 million concurrent viewers, ended the day with 89,000. It was the lowest-rated Schiff live stream since 2018. Platform analytics showed engagement drop-off concentrated at minute 23, the start of round 2, and minute 41, the opening of round 4. The platform sent him an automated notification that evening: your stream engagement is below average. Number, when was the last time, became a template. In 72 hours, it was used 2.3 million times, not by Republican influencers, by ordinary accounts. A high school history teacher in Ohio posted a graphic of Schiff with the caption, "When was the last time you met with Gemmell Moore's family, Senator?" The post collected 340,000 likes in a day. Schiff did not reply. He never would. The 8-second clip, Schiff at the table, after Johnson's departure, exhaling once into the microphone, was extracted, captioned, and remixed. By the end of the weekend, the Schiff sigh had 31 million views as a standalone asset. TikTok creators used it as a reaction video for every context the platform offered. A teacher caught unprepared, a husband caught in a lie, an employee caught by a question they could not answer. The clip escaped politics. It became a unit of internet language. His Wikipedia page was edited 847 times in 48 hours. Moderators locked it. The controversies section doubled in length. His profile photo was replaced 6 times with the image of him sitting in silence at the hearing table. Each time a moderator reverted it. The 7th time, they did not. Google Trends reported a 200% increase in searches for Adam Schiff resign. Searches for Adam Schiff mortgage rose 900%. Searches for Adam Schiff, Ed Buck, a query that had remained stable and low for 8 years, rose 0%. On r/Politics, a subreddit that had long been friendly territory, the highest voted post of the week was not a defense. It was a question posted by a user who had been commenting there for a decade. The title read, "Why didn't anyone tell us about the emails to Jasmine Canik?" It collected 47,000 upvotes. Tanganghe, the Chi. The Maryland U.S. Attorney's Office expanded the existing grand jury scope within 72 hours of the hearing. 2 new subpoenas were issued, one to Wells Fargo for compliance records covering 2012 through 2019, a second to the Burbank Tax Preparer's Office. The grand jury moved from 1 session per week to 2, ABC News reported, citing a law enforcement source that a former Schiff staff member had requested an immunity deal. The Senate Select Committee on Ethics announced a preliminary inquiry into the emails read at the hearing. Schiff's attorney issued a short statement. Senator Schiff will cooperate fully with any legitimate inquiry. The statement did not deny the emails. Reporters noted this publicly. The Senate Judiciary Committee requested that Schiff produce all FISA-era staff communications under seal for committee review. Through counsel, Schiff formally declined, invoking language about reserving all constitutional prerogatives. It was the exact phrase Donald Trump had used in 2019 when Schiff's own committee had sought documents from the Trump administration. Within 4 hours, A supercut of Schiff, mocking that phrase on 23 separate occasions, had been compiled and posted. Seth Meyers opened his late-night monologue with Senator Schiff, today discovered the Fifth Amendment, better late than never. In Los Angeles, under renewed public pressure about the Buck case, the county district attorney's office announced a review of donation records and communications between Buck and California Democratic officials between 2016 and 2019. Jasmine Kanick held a press conference at a community center in Leimert Park. She said one sentence that the networks ran for the rest of the week: 8 years. That, as how long we've been asking. The House Committee on Ethics, which had been directed by the 2023 censure resolution to investigate Schiff and had never completed that investigation, reopened the case. The committee chairman issued a brief statement. Recent evidence warrants committee attention. By the end of the third week, 4 investigations were active simultaneously: the Maryland Grand Jury, Senate Ethics, House Ethics, the Los Angeles County DA review. Schiff's legal team grew from one partner at a Washington firm to a team of 7. Reported billables exceeded $2.8 million in the first month alone. Tong Balao Dai, creative artists agency, terminated Schiff's speaking contract. There was no press release. The engagements booked for 2026 and 2027 were quietly restructured into unpaid appearances at state party events. The rate dropped from $75,000 per speech to 0. Penguin Random House returned the $2.1 million advance on Schiff's planned second memoir, citing a mutual decision to revisit the project timeline. An industry source told Publishers Weekly, "There is no timeline. The book is dead." Schiff's first memoir, Midnight in Washington, fell out of Amazon's top 5,000 for the first time since its 2021 release. Crooked Media ended its podcast development deal with Schiff. In a weekly episode of Pod Save America, which did not mention Schiff by name, one of the hosts said, "We've made a difficult decision about a planned project. Our listeners deserve hosts they can trust." Listeners did not need the name. Schiff missed 11 consecutive Senate votes, the longest absence of his career. When he returned, he entered through the side door. 3 Democratic senators passed him in the hallway without greeting him. A Senate staff photographer captured him standing alone at the elevator bank. The photograph circulated with a caption, "The loneliest hallway in Washington." 4 months after the hearing, Schiff announced that he would not seek re-election in 2036, years before his term ended. The statement ran 400 words. It did not mention the hearing. It did not mention the investigations. It used the phrase, "more time with my family," a phrase Schiff himself had ridiculed on the Senate floor in 2018, when a Republican congressman had used it to resign under ethics pressure. Clips of that ridicule surfaced within the hour. The Los Angeles Times published a 14,000-word investigation titled "The Schiff Papers: What the Speaker Read Aloud." The story confirmed that 11 of the documents read at the hearing had direct equivalents in staff archives that had been subpoenaed by the Ethics Committee. The public did not parse the distinction between the documents Johnson had read and the archives that confirmed them. The public simply remembered that the emails had been real. The weight of an entire career, meticulously curated for decades, had entirely evaporated under the scrutiny of a single afternoon, leaving behind an inescapable echo of failure. By year's end, Schiff was not invited to the State of the Union address. The Democratic National Committee did not ask him to speak at its next convention, the first convention he had missed as a speaker since 2004. His name was removed from the Democratic Senate fundraising literature. A political reporter approached him at an airport on the anniversary of the hearing. She asked if he had anything he wanted to say about that day. Schiff was silent for 8 seconds. "I did my job." It was the only public statement he made about the hearing in the entire first year. The 8-second silence that preceded the sentence was captured on her phone. It was posted that evening. It collected 9.2 million views within a day, more than the total views of every speech Schiff had delivered on the Senate floor in his first year as a senator combined. On Wikipedia, quietly, without announcement, Schiff's biographical category was updated. It had long read American politicians. Now it read American politicians who have been censured. No one reverted the edit. No one noticed. No one argued. If a lifetime of political maneuvering can be undone by a quiet man reading from a pocket constitution, what does that reveal about the fragile illusion of modern power?